Hi there. So we're going to begin Ingersoll Lockwood's 1900 or The Last President today. Now this is an original version that's got all the, no, hasn't been fixed or edited by anybody. The only online version I could find was edited by a guy named Carl Marwick in 2017. Fixed up some of the language. If you went through the last book with me, Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, there were lots of typos in there that I just whizzed by, and wrong words and stuff like that, and language of the old world, so to speak. But we're going to start this one, and we're going to skip all of Carl Morwick's, talking about it and stuff. I was to say, it was written in 1896, and in 2017, after President Trump was elected, this book got real popular because even though this is a work of fiction, it is almost a play-by-play of what's going on today, or since 2017. So it'll be interesting, and if it's edited too bad, I'll refer to this book, which is the original writing. So let's begin. We'll jump over here. And this is Morwick stuff. This is part of the book, and this is fiction. Mainstream media of the day, 1896. The Chicago platform assumes, in fact, the form of a revolutionary propaganda. It embodies a menace of national disintegration and destruction. Garrett A. Hobart. Mainstream media, even going back then. So, Chapter 1. We'll begin. That was a terrible night for the great city of New York, the night of Tuesday, November 3rd, 1896. The city staggered under the blow like a huge ocean liner which plunges full speed with a terrific crash into a mighty iceberg and recoils shattered and trembling like an aspen. Sound familiar? The people were gathered, light-hearted and confident, at the evening meal when the news burst upon them. It was like a thunderbolt out of the azure sky. Altgeld holds Illinois hard and fast in the Democratic line. This elects Bryan President of the United States. And imagine that was a Democrat. Strange to say, the people of the upper portion of the city made no movement to rush out of their houses and collect in the public squares, although the night was clear and beautiful. They sat as if paralyzed with a nameless dread, and when they conversed, it was with bated breath and throbbing hearts. In less than half an hour, mounted policemen dashed through the streets, calling out, "Keep within your houses, close your doors, and barricade them. The entire East Side is in a state of uproar." Mobs of vast size are organizing under the lead of anarchists and socialists, and threaten to plunder and despoil the houses of rich who have wronged and oppressed them for so many years. Keep within doors, extinguish all lights. It does sound like something that happened in 2017, doesn't it? Happily, Governor Morton was in town, and although a deeper pallor overcame the ashen hue of age as he spoke, yet there was no tremor in his voice. "Let the 7th, 22nd, and 71st regiments be ordered under arms. In a few moments, hundreds of messengers could be heard racing through the silent streets, summoning the members of these regiments to their armories." Slowly, but with astonishing nerve and steadiness, the mobs pushed the police northward, and although the force stood the onslaught with magnificent courage, yet beaten back, the dark masses of infuriated beings surged up again with renewed fury and strength. "Will the troops be in time to save the city?" was the whispered inquiry among the knots of police officials who were directing the movements of their men. About 9 o'clock, with deafening outcries, the mob, like a four-headed monster breathing fire and flame, raged into Union Square. The police force was exhausted, but their front was still like a wall of stone, save that it was movable. The mob crowded it steadily to the north, while the air quivered and was rent with mad shouts of the victors. "Bryan is elected! Bryan is elected! Our day has come at last! Down with our oppressors! Death to the rich man! Death to the gold bugs! Death to the capitalists! Give us back our money you have ground out of us! Give us back the marrow of our bones which you have used to grease the wheels of your chariots." The police force was now almost helpless. The men still used their sticks, but the blows were ineffectual, and only served to increase the rage of the vast hordes now advancing upon Madison Square. The Fifth Avenue Hotel will be the first to feel the fury of the mob. Would the troops be in time to save it? A half cheer, a half cry of joy goes up. It is inarticulate. Men draw a long breath. Women drop upon their knees and strain their eyes. They can hear something, but their electric plants had been destroyed by the mob early in the evening. They preferred to fight in the dark, or by the flames of rich men's abodes. Again, a cheer goes up louder and clearer this time, followed by the cries of, "They're coming, they're coming." Yes, they were coming. The 22nd down Broadway, the 7th down Madison Avenue, both on double quick. In a moment or so, there were a few bugle calls, and a few spokesman commands rang out clear and sharp, and then the two regiments stretched across the entire square, literally from wall to wall, in line of battle. The mob was upon them. With this slender line of troops, could it hold such a mighty mass of men in check? The answer was deafening discharge of firearms, a terrific crack. Such and some thunderbolts make when they explode, or blazed across the square. Again and again it blazed forth. The mob halted, stood fast, wavered, fell back, advanced again. At that moment there came the rattle. It came, come on like a wall of iron, slashed in bearing down some doubly vigorous foe. As the bells rang out midnight, the last remnants of the mob were driven to cover, but the wheels of the dead wagons rattled till daybreak. And then the aged governor, in response to the mayor's "Thank God we saved the city," made answer, "Aye, but the Republic." That was chapter 1. We can go on to chapter 2. It's a short story. I might only take a few versions. Great as has been the world's wonder at the uprising of Mr. Bryan's struggling masses, quote unquote, in the city by the sea, the narrow escape of his magnificent homes from fire and brand, yet greater still was the wonderment when the news was flashed across the land that Chicago did not stand in need of a single federal soldier. Chicago is mad, but it is the madness of joy. Chicago is in the hands of a mob, but it is a mob made up of her own people. Noisy roof ground the faces of the poor. Air pressed its lupine visage hard against them. That the Lord had been good to them, that the wicked money changers had been driven from the temple, that the stony-hearted youth at the helm now, that peace and plenty would be in a few moons come back to the poor man's wondering, drew no bomb of dynamite from her bosom to hurl at the hated minions of the law who were silent spectators of this delirium of popular joy. Why was it thus? Look, and you shall know why white-robed peace-violent brand and turned its thought from red-handed pillage. He was there, the master spirit, to hold them in leash. He, and he alone, had lifted Bryan to his great and commonwealth of the West hard and fast in the democratic line. Hence his name as conqueror, kingmaker, and the very walls of the sky-touching edifices trembled as he was dragged through the crowded streets by this orderly mob. 10 times 10,000 of his creatures bellowed his name and shook their hats aloft in mad exultation. You're our savior. You've cleaned the temple of liberty of its foul horde of usurers. We salute you. We call you kingmaker. Bryan shall call you master too. You shall have your reward. You shall stand behind the throne. Your wisdom shall make us whole. You shall purge the land of this unlawful crowd of moneylenders you shall save the Republic. You are greater than Washington. You're a better friend of ours than Lincoln. You'll do more for us than Grant. We're your slaves. We salute you. We thank you. We bless you. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. Wow. I could say a name today, huh? But yet as this vast throng of tamed monsters, this mighty mob of momentarily good-natured haters of established order, broke away from the master's control for a few brief moments and dipped their hands in the enemy's blood. The deed was swift and it was terrible. There were but 4 of them, unarmed, unpleasure-bent. At sight of these men, 1,000 throats belched out a deep and awful growl of hatred. They were brave men, and backed against the wall, to die like brave men. Stricken down, beaten, torn, trampled, dragged, it was quick work. They had faced howling savages in the far west, painted monsters in human form, but never had they heard such yells leave the throats of men. And so they died, 4 brave men, clad in the blue livery of the Republic, whose only crime was that, some months back, against the solemn process of the master, their comrades had set foot on the soil of the Commonwealth and saved the metropolis of the West from the hands of this same mob. And so Chicago celebrated the election of the new president, who was to free the land from the grasp of the moneylenders and undo the bad business of years of unholy union between barterers and sellers of human toil and the lawmakers of the land. Throughout the length and breadth of the South, and beyond the great divide, the news struck hamlet and village like the glad tidings of a new evangel, almost as potent for human happiness as the heavenly message of 2,000 years ago. Bells rang out in joyful acclaim, and the very stars trembled at the telling over and over of what had been done for the poor man by his brethren of the North. And around the blazing pine knots of the southern cabin and in front of the mining campfires at the far west, the cry went up, "Silver is king, silver is king." Silver. Black palms and white were clasped in this strange love feast, and the dark-skinned grandchild no longer felt the sting of lash on his sire's shoulder. All was peace and goodwill for the people who were last victorious over their enemies, who had taxed and tithed them into a very living death. Now the laborer would not only be worthy of his hire, but it would be paid to him in a people's dollar, for the people's good. And now the rich man's coffers would be made to yield up their ill-gotten gain. And the sun would look upon this broad and fair land, and find no man without a market of the product of his labors. Henceforth the rich man should, as was right and proper, pay a royal sum for the privilege of his happiness, and take the nation's taxes on his broad shoulders, where they belong. Tax the rich. That's interesting. That's 2 chapters. You know what? Let's stop there. It's very interesting. A lot of hyperbole here. Some of it makes you want to go, But hey, we'll read it. That's interesting. We'll go to chapter 3 next time, or maybe get a little farther. So we should be able to cover this in a week or so. But until next time, think about it. Do some research on your own. We'll keep reading this book. It's a small book. So, see you next time.